We thought you might like to know that there is a camp in Indiana that brings together foster kids. You might not know that foster kids often get split up, and so siblings don't get the chance to see each other that often, if ever. So, Camp to Belong brings those kids together for a fun filled week. So, we talk about various issues regarding foster care, and we also talk about how you can support Camp to Belong Indiana. Stay tuned right after this here on The Chris Spangle Show. Becky Moore, director of Camp to Belong Indiana. Thanks for joining me today. Tell us a little bit about the work that you do. What is Camp to Belong Indiana?
Hey, Camp to Belong Indiana is a member camp of an international organization, Camp to Belong. There are 10 states that have it and Australia, and there are many states that don't have it, but it is a camp. The organization is dedicated. Their main thing is to have a camp for siblings who are separated because they live in different foster homes. And the strict definition for us is any out of home placements. But most of those are foster homes. But they could be like different kids spread out among relatives because they're waiting for their parents to come back or whatever. But in most cases, they are kids who are siblings that are separated into different foster homes. And they have to be in Indiana, and they have to be 8 to 18.
Yes, and check out Camp to Belong, ind.org, their website, and check out the national organization to see if they're available in your area to support. My in-laws had brought over 4 Ukrainian orphans last summer and for Christmas. And that was the first time that the 4 kids had spent time together. They're in sort of the same facility over there, but they hadn't spent time together. So it was really like a bonding experience for them. So that kind of is a huge reason I wanted to talk to you, because I've seen the power of that connection when there was disconnection before, and they're their only family members. So what was your attraction to this? How did you come to start Camp to Belong?
Well, the idea is, everybody talks about how hard it is for kids who get out of foster care and how they have a hard time making it in adult life. And it's been shown that you have to have a connectedness to someone in order to feel grounded and to go forward and have a more successful and happy life in adulthood. And we just think that one of the best ways to do that is to have a connectedness between the siblings, because that's a natural thing that if it's allowed to develop, it would. And that will help them have better adulthoods. If you have no connection to anybody, you're more likely to engage in dangerous activities, maybe stay in dangerous relationships you shouldn't be in. But if you have a family, you're part of a family, it's going to be a better situation. For me, I saw the founder of Camp to Belong, which is an international organization, on Oprah, and Oprah was giving Lynn Price, I think it was called Live Your Life Award, that Oprah was giving for people that did outstanding volunteer type things. And I saw this in the 1990s, and I thought that is a great idea and it's really needed. And at the time, I was raising 3 kids and teaching, so I was like, I can't do this now. But after I retired and I had an empty nest, my kids are graduates of IU, Purdue, and Rose-Hulman now. And so I had the possibility of having the time to be able to bring it to Indiana. And if it had existed when I was growing up decades ago, which the international organization hadn't even been started then, but if it had existed, I would have been a camper. And I was one of 7 siblings, and the youngest 5 were at an age that went into foster care. And Another thing is I'm a good example of um, an inspiration story because I went from foster care to IU Bloomington to a dorm and graduated in 4 years and then had a teaching career. And I've been married 46 years and raised 3 children. So people need to hear that kids need to hear that that's a possibility. But on the other hand, if you don't want to go to college, there are lots of ways to set yourself up for success. Joining the service, getting a skilled trade, um, setting yourself up so that you would be able to have a happy adulthood.
How much do you want to get into your story? I'd love to hear a little bit about your backstory and why you and your siblings were separated and how has that played out over the years, that
Well,
separation.
well, my mother died in a car accident, and then we had 3 years of like kinship care, different combinations, different kids with different grandparents and aunts and uncles, and it was just a different time then when people did not have money and the social connections that there are now were not there. And I was too little to be a part of the decision making, but now that I'm the age my grandparents were at the time, I can imagine how hard it would have been to think about raising the raising my grandkids when there are so many of them and so little money. And I would have to think about spending the rest of my lifetime getting these kids raised and maybe not being able to do a good job because I didn't have enough money. So I wasn't part of the decision because I was young. But then I was 9 when I went into foster care. So I spent 9 years in foster care.
What does that look like? Because I don't really know much about foster care.
Well, uh, it's different for everybody. And I like to think that a lot of the kids who are in foster care are in a lot better place than they would be with their parents because their parents weren't able to raise them. Um, but you, and I think in all foster homes, there's something that you don't like about it, even the best ones. And even the worst ones, there are things that you do like about it. But I know that there's a big range of how good foster homes are. But I just like to think that most people are doing it for the right reasons and the kids are in a better place than they would be if they were not able to get to that foster home.
So, I mean, I don't want to get into debates or conversations necessarily on current events,
Right.
but I see a lot of anti-foster care sentiment right
Right.
now,
Right.
and a lot of conversation that I think if I were a foster kid would make me feel kind of unwanted. I mean, when you watch the news or watch your Facebook feed and you see some of the conversation around foster care, what comes into your mind?
Well, I know that there are unfortunate circumstances in foster care. And there was just an article in the newspaper about how many failed adoptions there are. And I would think that a lot of those reasons come from the kids, but some of those reasons come from the adults, but they're just mismatched. And then the adoptions fall apart. But there are many, many more happy adoptions that happen, and kids that you see these success stories about now they're finally adopted and how happy the kids are to be in a family. And sometimes it's like the parents say, we didn't save them, they saved us. It's a mutual thing that's a good thing. So it's just really hard to generalize because a lot of times the unfortunate things or the bizarre things or the things that you hear about, and you don't hear about all the good success stories.
Yeah, you can't generalize unless you're on the internet. Uh,
But there are people who do it for the money, I know.
mhm.
But when I was raising my kids, I was like, there has to be an easier way to make money than to raise kids.
Especially kids that aren't necessarily yours. Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine how that's a good way to make money.
uh, so you mentioned something interesting just a minute ago that, compared to now, back then there wasn't as much community or resources. The vibe is that, community is eroding and that people aren't engaging in the way that they used to be. And wasn't it wonderful back in 1980 or 60 or 40 when everybody was just so much more community minded? You
Yeah.
know, what leads you to that experience, to that insight?
Well, for one thing, it's so much easier to, well, now they have programs for after foster care, like from 18 to 23, in some cases 25 or 26, where they have programs where they can, if kids decide that they want to enroll in that, they can get help. And it's kind of like they can have a place to live until they get on their feet. So there are programs like that, and like foster success would be a big help. If you reach out to the right people, there are big helps. Plus, I don't know if you know about 21st century scholars.
A little bit. It's been mentioned on this program, but please, for those who don't know, just briefly
Okay,
touch on it.
uh, that didn't exist when I was growing up, but now, if for kids who are at risk or low income, and I don't even know what the parameters are for that, but there are certain kids who can sign up, and they're supposed to sign up between seventh and eighth grade. And if they sign up and they meet all the deadlines and make the grades and take the right classes and stay out of legal trouble, the state will pay for them to go to college. They will pay the tuition for them to do in-state college. And if you're in foster care, you can sign up for that in 7th through 12th grade. Like if a kid were only in foster care for like 2 weeks their sophomore year, they could sign up for 21st century scholars and keep it. If they kept meeting the deadlines that they need to meet, they could still have it. So kids in foster care can sign up for that at any time after 7th grade.
That's
So that's a big advantage. And then there are also places that you can apply for a certain amount for spending money for each year that you're in college, which would be a big help. And there are lots of nonprofits, which I'm sure you're aware of, that would be able to help in that situation.
Yeah. I mean, the difference of where there are gaps, there is somebody willing to help and wanting to start an organization to fill any gap in any, and that's sort of what this show is trying to do, is to encourage people to start one or to be a part of one. Find one and be a part of something that you care about.
Plus, there's a lot of money available too, like
Yeah.
Pell Grants. That Pell Grants existed when I went through school, but um, there are lots of different avenues for finding money that probably didn't exist back then.
So let's talk about Camp to Belong. We're talking to Becky Moore, who's the director of Camp to Belong Indiana. Their website, camptobelongind.org. If you'd like to help them, how did the idea of Camp to Belong get started? Not your journey, but the overarching organization. And tell us what the campers get out of coming together at Camp to Belong.
Okay. Lynn Price was an adult who was volunteering, and she saw that these kids were missing their siblings. And she said, why can't we just get them together at camp and they could get to spend, 24/7 together? And of course, the boys are in boys' cabins at night and the girls are in girls' cabins at night, but the brothers are together and the sisters are together. And then today, during the day, they're together most of the day. Um, but she said, let's get these siblings together for camp. And then it just happened that other ones started, and also people from other parts of the country would travel to their camp. So then those states would start camps. And the idea of most camps, the biggest thing that a camp to belong camp does is have a week of camp for the siblings. But as we get to be a more mature organization, and the ones that have existed for like 10 years have reunion events all year. Like we could get together and go to a Colts game, or have an August swimming party, or have a hike in a state park, where we get the kids together for just one day, a 1 day reunion. Christmas parties are popular, and midwinter things, bowling events, lots of different ideas could exist on what you could do, horseback riding instruction, or fun at a stable. There are all kinds of ideas for what kind of reunion events could happen, which, as your organization grows, you can develop those as you go. So far, our organization is so young and small that we don't have that set up. But what our main thing is our camp right now.
So why do siblings get split up? I mean, that seems kind of cruel. I know in the case of the orphans, they didn't want to be split up, which is why they haven't been adopted. Is it just a necessity thing that if you want to get adopted or not be, I don't know, if you're not in a home with a family, like, are you in where do you go if you're not, like, I don't know. Explain the system to me, because I don't know much about it here in America.
Well, as you can imagine, when a family, it's decided that a family's going to go to foster care, and there are several siblings, there's hardly ever going to be one home that could take all of them if there are multiple kids. Just usually I would think it would be a nightmare to be a caseworker and have a big family that you would have to place. You would have to be talking to different foster parents and say, oh, can you take the 7-year-old? Oh, can you take the 12-year-old? And some foster parents have a certain age range that they want. Like, if you don't want to have to pay for daycare, you would probably want school age kids. Some foster parents like having babies, and they will take them like until they're 3. Or that's what they would like to have placed with them as younger kids. Some are probably, it's just that you have to fit them where they will fit. And I haven't done that before, but I can just imagine that I think it would be really hard to have to place a family.
So what do the kids say about your camp? What do you hear from the kids at the camp?
Well, it's fun to hear them say when they come to camp, is my sister here yet? Where is she? And they want to see each other. And one of the counselors after the first night said that there were 2 sisters who were holding hands from one bunk to the next bunk.
Aww.
And swinging their arms. And she goes, "You're doing a good thing."
You're going to make me cry.
Yeah, I know.
It's just sweet.
But,
Yeah.
I mean, they're excited to see each other. But let me tell you, there is a lot of drama in the families. We don't even know all the things that have happened, and there is a lot of drama. And you know how siblings argue in normal circumstances.
Yeah.
So when you have an emotion filled week, you can imagine that that would be pretty intense. In fact, I've heard this story more than once. One of the kids gets mistreated, like when they live at home. One of the kids gets mistreated and runs away, and the police are called because there's a runaway or some kid is found. And then the home gets investigated, and the kids all get put in foster care. And then it's like all the kids are blaming the one that ran away for letting people find out, and that it's their fault that they got put in foster care, which it's not fair, but that's a common story.
Kids think like kids. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would imagine coming back and reconcile. It's kind of a safe person that you can take things. I mean, when I have a brother and a sister, and it's just sort of safe to fight with them. There's not as many consequences, I guess, when you're fighting with your siblings.
Plus, even with my own kids, the older ones would want to ditch the young brothers that wanted to follow them, and like, oh, I want to hang out with the cool older kids, That's a common thing in every family. Like, let me ditch my little brother so we can do fun things together.
So what activities do you do at camp? Is it at a specific camp, or do you move around? Like, what does the campground look like? If we were to show up as one of your kids, give us the tour of what we get to do.
Okay, it's a regular camp, and we just contract with them for a week. So they have all the fun experiences that all kids do, but they do it for free because we pay for it. Like this year there was boating, swimming every day, crafts, singing, campfires, s'mores, the regular things that you do at camp. But Camp to Belong has to, well, they don't like for me to say has to, but we are required to provide 6 signature events, because that makes us different. Because we have the siblings together, the 6 signature events, 4 of them are just fun ways for siblings to have fun together and to bond. One of them is we have a carnival, and it's kind of like a kid mixer. Like adults would have a mixer, but without any booze. But instead of that, snow cones and popcorn and candy. But they get to realize, well, they get acquainted with all the other campers, and especially their siblings. But also,
do you find that the siblings, like, what's the average of the per family? Is it
3?
Like 3?
It can vary between 2 to 5, but it averages out to almost 3.
Ages 8 to 18, do you find that most don't have a familiarity, or is there a familiarity with each other, or
it varies?
Or is it just sort of an awkward reunion? Like, I'm sure there's no like clear-cut answer here, but I wonder what that process is like for the kids.
It varies. Sometimes we had a family this year that some of the kids lived in southern Indiana and some of them lived in northern Indiana. So they couldn't get together very much. And it kind of depends upon how much they're able to get together, by how busy their lives are, how busy the foster families are, and whether, in my case, I had a lot of grandparents and aunts and uncles that were involved, so they got us together. But it just depends on who you have involved. But lots of kids don't have anybody involved, so it kind of just happens. Whatever happens, happens. But in a lot of cases, and here's another difference between back then and now, there is such a thing as sibling visitation. You've heard of parent visitation, and there's even a thing called grandparent visitation, but now there is sibling visitation, and it is a formal thing that kids and foster families can request that the siblings are able to get together. But it varies a lot because there's not much, I don't think there's very much money behind it. And case managers are so overworked that you can imagine how hard it would be. Plus, what I say is, think if you are picked up by a case manager and your brother's picked up by a case manager and you go eat a meal together with a case manager, or you get to go to their office and somebody's watching you, but you get to sit there and talk together, that's not going to be fun.
Yeah.
So if you don't have money behind it to do fun things and people who have enough time to do that, you're not going to have very much sibling visitation. But what I say is our whole camp is fun. And it's like, some say it's like 5 years of sibling visitation put all in 1 week.
That's great. So, I mean, what are a couple more of the signature events? I don't want to move on before we finish.
Yeah. One of them is a birthday party. We have a sorority that does a shop.
And do these happen the 6th throughout the year, or is this during that week?
These are during this week.
Okay.
And the sorority brings the gifts, and we let the kids go in without their siblings and pick out the gift that they want to give to the sibling. They get to wrap it. They get to design a birthday card. And then we have a birthday party, and the birthday party has they get a birthday cake that they get to decorate as a family and eat, and then cake and ice cream, and then a dance with the DJ that is a lot of fun. It's just fun. And the idea of the birthday party is that kids in foster care are usually not together for their birthdays. So we're just celebrating everybody's birthday at one big birthday party. Another thing that we had that's not required is we had a talent show, and that was a lot of fun. We had a volunteer who came in and helped the kids decide what their act would be. And then she brought all the backdrop and mics and speakers and props that they would need, and it was fun. But that's not one of the 6 that's required. The first night we have an inspiration campfire, and the idea of that is just to let the kids know why they're there, what qualifies them. And like I was saying at the carnival, the kids realize that other families are in the same situation that they're in. All 40 of our campers were in the same situation this year. And they get to realize that when they get acquainted with everybody. Like, your family's here and they live in 2 different foster homes. You live in different foster homes. And they also get to see that all the volunteers that come in throughout the whole week are people who care about them. So it kind of, we hope that it gives them a better feeling of well-being, because they know that there are other kids in the same situation. Because the kids might go to a school where they're the only foster kids in the whole school.
One of the running themes of this show at every organization is helping the clients, the students, whatever you want to call them, not feel alienated. Like, they're not weird. Like, there are other people who have the same emotions and feelings that you do, and that's just so empowering.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. And then the sibling projects, we've done pillows, and let me grab mine.
We are talking to Becky Moore, who is the director of Camp to Belong in Indiana, and you can learn more at camptobelongind.org. And so they have the shared project.
They have a project where they pick out, the adults make these pillows, and the kids get to.
Yeah, there you go. Right.
It's opposite of what I'm doing.
It looks normal to me. Yeah.
Yeah, the kids get to decorate this muslin panel, and they can say, "Love you, brother." think of me when you see this pillow, or they could just make a design. Like if somebody likes skateboarding, they could have a kid skateboarding or whatever. They design this however they want to. And then they have to stuff it with the white stuff that goes inside, and they sew it closed. And then they get to present this to their sibling at inspiration campfire, and the other kid gets to take it home as a keepsake.
No.
This one was made for me on the sly because I didn't know they were making it, but all the people involved with the first camp signed this pillow.
Oh.
But this is the kind of pillow the kids would get to take home. And then the second year, the second year that they come back, they get to do a fleece throw that has a panel on it that they're going to design.
Nice.
So the sibling project is another one of the events. The other two, oh no, another one that's fun is scrapbooking. Part of the thing about being in foster care is you hardly have pictures of yourself growing up, and you definitely don't have many pictures of your sibling. So if you don't see your sibling and you don't have a picture of them, it's hard to picture what they look like. And if you do have pictures with your siblings, sometimes they're of unhappy events. But we have a whole week of happy events. We take pictures throughout the whole week. We have volunteer photographers taking pictures. Then we have them printed. And then on Friday, we do a scrapbook. And the kid gets to learn how to scrapbook. And they get to go home with the scrapbook of the week. And then they have pictures of them. And they also have their friends that they've made too in these scrapbooks. So they have pictures of themselves, their siblings, and their new friends that have all had a fun week at camp, and they get to take the scrapbook home.
Yeah, go ahead.
And then the Life Empowerment Seminar is the one thing that's not really fun, but it's a class for 14 to 18-year-olds, and it tells them what's available. Like if they want to go to college, one of my biggest messages is most kids who are in foster care would say, I don't even have to wonder about whether I can go to college or not because I'm in foster care and there's no way I could pay for it. Well, that is the only reason I would not accept. That is not true, that you're not going to have the money.
That almost seems, I mean, they're not I don't know many people's parents who paid for the college, so I that seems like a false belief that you can correct there.
Well, there is money for kids who have been in foster care if they make the deadlines, if they take the right classes. But my message is that you need to think about that when you're young. You need to start studying when you're young and getting the grades that you want to get to where you're going to go if you want to go to college. If you're the type of person who never wants to study again and never take another test, then I'm not saying you should go to college, but think about something that interests you. Like if you like working on cars and all the classes that you can take would have to do with working on cars, wouldn't that be kind of fun to take those classes? Or if you wanted to join the armed services, armed forces, and like join the Army, and depending on whether you like to travel, depending on whether you like to have to be in shape the way they have to be in shape, and it just depends on whether you would like that lifestyle. But the idea of this 2 or 3 hour class is this is what's available for you. And also we talk about sibling visitation and how they could ask for sibling visitation and signing up for 21st Century Scholars, and then how to finance a college education if they wanted to go to college. But if they don't, how you would be able to have a way to get a skilled profession where you could really make good money. On one of the talk shows, here we have a guy who is from a plumbing place, and he says he picks apprentices who are apprentices for 4 years. And during that 4 years, they get paid. And they go to class one night a week for 4 years to learn how to be a plumber. Plus, they're getting on the job training because they're being apprentices. But they could support themselves for 4 years while they're taking a class one night a week in a topic that we hope that they would care about. And then at the end of those 4 years, they can make $90,000 as a plumber.
Yeah. I
That
mean,
is,
I have a young nephew. I'm like, go into the trades, man.
that is just amazing to
Yeah.
me. And it would be a way to be an apprentice um, and have a place to live and support yourself during those 4 years. And I mean, you would be working 40 hours a week, I assume, and taking classes one night a week. So it'd still leave time for fun. It's not
Yeah.
like it's
How many of your kids are repeats? Like, and I know there's about 40 kids. Like, is that capped, or could you have 300 if you had the resources? Could you, where are we at in terms of need?
in Camp to Belong, the international organization considers a full camp 100. But there aren't very many places that have 100 kids in their camp because most of the camps are young enough that raising that much money would be really hard, for one thing. The first year, they want you to have 30 in your camp. And being a teacher, I was like, 30 kids with this many volunteers, that would be so easy to do. But then I learned my lessons because you have to raise the money. You have to build up your community year by year. People come back and say, I want to do this again. I have organizations that have done events and they'll say, oh, we want to come back and do this again. But you have to build up that community. And when you have headaches, and you will have headaches and learn lessons, if you have a small number of kids, it's more manageable than it is if you started with a big number. You just have to start small. And we had our first camp in 2019. And one of the things you have to do to become a Camp to Belong camp is you have to go to an existing camp and participate. So the funny thing is, the person that was my co-founder and co-director for 2019 was just finishing her master's, and I had just retired. But she was a big camp person and was getting her master's in social work. So this kind of put together her interests. And then I was coming at it from a different direction. So it kind of worked. But we went to Washington State's camp, and they have 100 kids. So we saw a mature, really good camp in action, and it was just amazing. Now, Oregon, I think it's Oregon that has 2 camps. They have enough built up that they can do 200 kids. They do 100 in a June camp and have 100 kids in an August camp. But the usual is, like, a lot of camps do like 60 kids because they're kind of on their way up growing. But it just depends on how much money and how many people they have to help. So some of them don't plan to get bigger than 60. They
Yeah,
want to stay at that
you got
size. But I think I think by the numbers of how many kids there are in foster care, and then you're talking about how many have siblings, and how many have siblings between 8 and 18, and then how many are divided into different homes. And then you're talking about a big concentration coming from central Indiana, although people did drive quite a distance. We had the region, and we had Fort Wayne and South Bend, and coming from the river, Ohio River too, so southern Indiana too. But a big concentration here. But I think probably it would not be hard. Well, you'd have to build it up, but you could get to 100 easily. The thing about it is you have to have kids that aren't going to go to summer school. Some kids want to be on video games all the time. They're like, we don't want to go to a camp and have to
Ew,
go
bugs.
swimming. You know, if you're an energetic kid and you're not working and you don't have to go to summer school, and you and your siblings are all in agreement that you want to do this, and you have to have somebody that fills out the paperwork for you, you have to have people that are willing to drive you there and help you pack and get all the stuff ready. So it just takes a lot to get a family together to be able to do it.
So, shameless self promotion time, because you sent me a flyer that I will put a link to in our show notes if you're okay with that. Um, you know, there's so many different needs, not just counselors, but photographers, videographers, grant writers, publicists, IT specialists, intern, event leaders, social media manager, day volunteers, like, just birthday gifts, gift cards, cotton candy machine, popcorn machine, like all these different things that can help you build this up. There's so many different, and I'm hearing, like, if you're a business, maybe if you can, use some of your funds to throw an event to raise money for Camp to Belong. There's so many different ways, I think, to help you, but give the pitch. Shameless self-promotion time.
Okay, I think for me, I would never say to my husband, I want to bring kids into our home now that we're retired and we have an empty nest. I would like to think that I could take kids in and be a foster parent, but I'm just not in that place. But I think for everybody, there is a level of something that you can do to help. I mean, being the foster parent would be the ultimate thing because that would be 24/7 all year for years. But helping with an organization of your choosing or donating money, I mean, that's really fast. But there are things that you can do to help us plan and that would take you all year, or a little bit of time all year. Or you could do become a counselor and spend the week there, and I guarantee it would change your life. You could be a day volunteer and help with one of these events that you could come in and help with. You could be a company that would sponsor a certain event or pay for a certain treat or shirts or backpacks or swag or whatever, or just money for us to use for however we need to use it. There are just lots of different ways to get involved, depending on your skills and your interests.
And if you're listening outside of Indiana, you could start your own camp.
Yes, that's another point. We only have 10 in the United States. I think there have been 15 states maybe that have had camps, but our closest one to Indiana is Wisconsin. And then there are some on the West Coast, and there's some on the East Coast, and then Georgia and Alabama, and Colorado. But it's only 10 that exist in the United States. So if you live in one of those states, you could contact that organization and see how you could help. If you live in a state that doesn't have one, which there are 30 some states that have never had one, you could start your own organization. The way to start that is to contact the international organization, go to their website, which is camptobelong.org, and tell them that you're interested in it, and then schedule yourself to go visit one of the camps. And you would see it in action and see how it really works. And even if you didn't want to start one and you lived in a state where you didn't have one, you could help a neighboring state. Like if there are people in Ohio hearing this and they're saying, "Well, I don't want to start one of my own, but I'll go help Indiana," we would take them, so they could help a state that's close. And I think that's a lot of ways that states get started is they help another state, and then they see that they could how they could do it.
Yeah, I'm sure it's, it's not a full-time job for you. I'm sure that you put a lot of hours into it and do a lot of stuff, but it's manageable, right?
Well, you need people who have some time.
Mm.
It does take time, but the thing to do would be get somebody with you that you would enjoy working with, and the two of you then it could be manageable if you have a couple of people that are interested in it. And um and it depends upon how interested you're in. Indiana, it's DCS, Department of Child Services, but in some states they are very involved, and that's a big help too.
All right, final question.
Ugh.
What do you see every day or during camp week that you wish everybody understood about your work?
How important it is to have get the kids together, even if they don't know that it's important. Um, it is important to get the kids together, and hopefully, in Indiana, we'll be able to do the reunion events eventually. And it could be that that's how your listeners could get involved. They could say, "Well, I have a horse riding farm. We could have an event there." Or I'm a Colts person. I could make sure you could get tickets to get a reunion to go to a Colts game or something like that. But seeing how important it is to get the kids together and create that sibling bond.
Becky Moore, the camp director for Camp to Belong Indiana. Their website is camptobelongind.org. Sure, you can reach you there. Is that the best place to reach you if you want to chat?
Yes, and my phone number's on there. And there's a button for if you want to be a counselor. There's a button if you want to be a volunteer in another way. And you could just tell me how you're interested in becoming involved. And usually what happens is I call them up and listen to them until I hear something that is something that we need.
Very good. All right. Well, Becky, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for the opportunity. Nice meeting you, Chris.
And thank you to everybody for listening. All right, Becky, thank you so much. I'm going to leave it recording here because I'm going to do my intro after we hang up, but that was great.
Thank you.
All right, cool. Well, this will air. I'll send you the link once it's up and ready.